Hello everyone, and welcome to the start of my series where I review and rate creative maps that have been submitted to me through various sources. In my own free time, I have already begun to rate creative maps based on three different criteria. The first being on overall gameplay, where I look at how difficult a map is for players to qualify across all skill levels. The second criteria I look at is targeted at the newer beans and seeing how much struggles they might have when trying to qualify on certain maps. And the last criteria I look at is how much aesthetics are present in the map for players to take a good picture of the map or for them to have a fun memory of playing through the maps. For this series, I aim to give my official thoughts on the maps that is unrelated to the criteria that I have just mentioned, as sometimes the criteria can in fact blur out what I want to give when playing through the maps, and sometimes the ratings might not properly reflect what my true thoughts on the maps are. For those of you who are a bit aware of how I've been rating maps, I have usually directly rated maps an entire chunk separated by only course maps and survival maps, but those are left as a comment rather than an idea for a video. And in order for everyone to have a more pleasant viewing experience, I have decided to only feature 5 maps per video, and this series will go on as long as I have enough time to create out the videos, and second, that there are maps being submitted to me occasionally. There will not be any survival maps being rated as I am unable to have more than myself running through the maps due to the game's requirements of requiring more than one person to play through survival maps. And with that, let us hop over to the first particular map that is submitted to me. Our first map that is featured is Feathered Serpent from the creator Snake Rio. The description reads that we are supposed to race through the various obstacles to reach the finish line. And based on this overall view itself, it seems that there is an entire serpent waiting for us. So as you see that directly the first section that I just went through, there is multiple paths for players to take dependent on your skill level, which I say is a already good benefit for the newer players. Then once again, the second section may not contain as much skips, but for players who are a little more experienced, they can use the boom blasters, as they are called, to time their movement and increase the speed of navigating through the map. This third section might be a little bit more complicated due to the fan block that will be attempting to blow players off the map, but the area that I'm standing at right now is actually a safe spot where you can't be blown off the map. This fourth section can have multiple ways of clearing, whether through the usage of the flippers or even just crossing through the pallet beam, and as well as this triangular blocks. So we have just reached our first checkpoint of the map, and certainly there is actually much advantageous to having checkpoints in maps, because the players decided to have some happy accident and try to fall off the map, they can simply respawn, just like that. The rest of the map itself is relatively similar with also path to take, so I think newer players will be able to navigate through the map with ease. I think the only bad part about the map, I would say, is that newer players would have to constantly run through the same section over and over again if they start falling. But with enough practice and enough patience, I think players will be able to navigate through a map of this difficulty without much problem. As I have now qualified from this first map, I will be moving on to giving my overall slightly lesser described impressions of the map, and I will have attached the graphic to help you guys understand what I'm attempting to say, but please don't be worried that I am a little unclear, because for this map itself, it is rather quite linear for players to understand that there's not much of a confusing path for them to take. There are also various shortcuts implemented in the map itself for players to be able to qualify through different methods. And the overall aesthetic is indeed refreshing because the serpent design is really well thought out. And as I mentioned in the gameplay itself, the only negative thing I would have to say about this map is that there are limited amount of checkpoints, which can affect a newer player's experience. But we were all new at some point, and I'm sure most of us have played through maps like Slime Climb or the Slime Scraper, where there is no coming back should we make a fatal mistake and end up getting eliminated. So I would say that this is just the beginning for newer players to adapt, but not so difficult for to the point that they would be instantly frustrated, because if they do, it just means that they do not want to adapt at any point. For my official rating of this map, I will be giving it a solid 8.7 out of 10. Hopefully my thoughts have actually justified what I am trying to convey, as my rating down here may seem a little underwhelming for some people, but regardless, there is always positives and negatives to every single map that is created. And with that, let us actually move on to the second map after the journey in a serpent. Our second map title is Whimsical Hollow from the creator Reina. The description says that whether this map can be both risky or dangerous, and as a result, let's find out by playing through the map. At first glance, you can already see that there is lots of decorations planted across the map, be it the starting animal down here, if I hesitate to call it an animal, or even the various trees, the flowers that are planted across the wall itself in a very elegant manner, and even the insect over here, which most likely resembles a ladybug, but I'm just making speculations here. Moving through the map itself, I would say that the map is easy to navigate, and there it is, our first particular checkpoint. So this current section right here, you can see that there are two different paths to take. I will only be showing one path for the gameplay, but you can actually take any of the two paths in order to qualify. Now let's try again, as I was not able to run through the bin barrier, or bin bridge I will call it, in time. A happy accident leads to a second path. Now that I have managed to qualify from this second map, again I will move on to my official thoughts on this map, which, as you see here, I have mentioned the points that there is lots of aesthetics, which proves that you can have a fun and simple map to qualify from, even with lots of amount of aesthetics, and at the same time it shows how much time the creator of this map has spent making this map with the amount of aesthetics, because ensuring that the aesthetics land ends up in the correct placing is not at all easy, because I have tried doing some simple aesthetic maps myself, and the settings in the game is a little bit inflexible, so you have that to appreciate from this map. And overall, for gameplay, it is easy to navigate with clear paths to follow. It is unlike other maps that I have seen but may not get to rate because of how confusing paths there will be, and simply it is at certain times really just complicated to let players know where they should be moving at certain points. Now that I have given my thoughts on this map, let us move on to an official rating for this particular map. And the rating I have given for this map is a high rating of 9.2 out of 10. The only reason why it is not any higher than 9.2, it is because of certain faults I can find for the newer players, not for the more experienced players, of course, but for newer players where they might struggle with how to move past the bean barriers, or as I even called them at certain point, bean bridges, as you are basically walking on that bridge in order to move to the next house as shown in the map itself. The path on the right has a boom blaster that will blast you up to the top of the tree for those who have not played this map, so a little spoiler that right there. But regardless, I will not show what other decorations there are on that map if you decide to take that path. But for newer players, if they are unable to time the beam barrier and boom blasters, they might struggle a little, as they might find that they might get stuck at the very end after coming so far in the map itself. This map is really an example that I would say can make it into the knockout show, but depends on whether the developers feel that this map is good enough and meets their criteria. So with that, let us move to the third round that I will be rating in this particular map. Our third map for today is titled Happy Birthday from the creator Bitter Goblin. First instance I can see, obviously, this is meant to be a happy occasion with the amount of gifts, the candles, and the large cake that you can see in the background. Even the slice of cake even has some decorations on them, which obviously everyone loves to taste anyways. So let's travel down this fork and you can see that the slices get a little smaller. That is in proportion with the cake design itself, and we have a third slice of cake here, and we get our first checkpoint. And now we are on to the turning stage before we navigate the actual cake itself. Of course, each map has to have some gameplay element in it, so this is why there are obstacles in place that might not resemble a complete cake. So this little bouncer right here can be classified as a shortcut for more experienced players, and for newer players they can take the longer route and make use of the drums at the very end of each layer in order to move to the next layer. Well, now that was a fun little map, wasn't it? Let us move to my official thoughts for this map, as I have not much to say about this map, because as you will see here, this is indeed a short map to navigate across, and in all honesty, when we celebrate our birthdays, who doesn't actually enjoy the day itself, because there are different things for us to look forward to. I cannot really think of any negatives for this particular map. Perhaps say for the fact that if this type of map ever makes it into an official show where not all players can qualify, the newer players might not be able to qualify as often due to the fact that they have to take a longer route until they understand how to be able to use the shortcuts to its fullest potential. Other than that, let's actually move on to an official rating. And for this map, I will be giving it a 8.35 out of 10, simply because the cake itself is obviously well layered. There are ample space for the players to walk through the different layers. But the only reason why this map is not really higher is simply because of the experience that newer players can have. So with that all said and done, if newer players obviously are smarter than I think they are, this map would definitely be higher than it currently is. But even until today, before the removal of most of the rounds since the latest update, I have seen players struggle on Lily Leapers where they are just unable to reach the finish line, and 80% of the time that round ends in a timeout where the number of people that has qualified until that point will move on to the next round, and it's really disappointing to see most of the time. Regardless, after the fun little occasion and journey in the birthday cake, let us move to the fourth map for today, and please enjoy yourselves. Our fourth map for today is titled Orbitron from the creator Cookie Crumb 888. In the description, it is said that this map basically resembles an octagon with different sections to navigate across, and instantly we see that there is a very minor skip that players can use that resembles a satellite, but that is not a section in its own accord. Moving on, we see our first checkpoint and our first real obstacle, which is, I have no idea how to resemble this little obstacle as, but regardless of this, it is always interesting to know that obstacles like this even exist even in outer space. Now that we are actually at checkpoint number 2, I do notice that there are multiple paths that can be taken if players are a little careless in their timing, as saw with this particular third section, where there are multiple paths to take. So that itself was indeed our fourth section. Moving on to our fifth section of the map, we have to navigate through these rotating color blocks to reach the next section, and there we are. So there is a warning on this side of the map that says the spike itself equals to a respawn, so we have to look out for that as we navigate this next section. So for players who are a little bit unaware, the reason why I'm keeping a distance from the actual spike itself is that the respawn zone is a little bit bigger than it seems due to the inflexibility of the game. So please be cautious if you were to do this by yourself. The next section basically resembles a turbine where you have to navigate through the turbine itself. And this final section, before we get to qualify from the map, we have a little fun obstacle course where we are navigating through different obstacles and final drum to reach the finish line. So moving on to my official thoughts for the map. Oops, this is the wrong map to show. I apologize. The map itself is actually an adventure in space, and I'm actually rather curious as to how do the beans breathe in space. For difficulty and map length, I would say that they are average. There are numerous checkpoints littered across the map, so newer players really, please do not be afraid to make any mistakes as you are pretty much protected. The only bad thing or less positive things I have to say about this map is that Some of the obstacles are more complicated for the newer players to understand, like the spike section, where even if the newer players seen the warning, they decide to stick behind the spikes. If they get a little too close, they will just be respawned for absolutely no reason, and that's when questions might start coming out. But regardless, let me give an official rating for this map, which would turn out to be a 7.95 out of 10. As I've already mentioned that the newer players would rather struggle with certain parts of the map, but overall the gameplay is definitely there. I do actually enjoy this map, so don't do not think that if I ever give maps that are lower than a rating of 8, it means that the map is bad. That is not true, because the way of how I rate maps will be different from how others rate maps, and I don't actually use the creator as a factor for my rating, as most players, when they come into the game and play through the maps, they will have no idea what are the repetition behind the creator is like. And regardless, that is really all I have to say, because players eventually will have to adapt to maps like these and even much more complicated maps that should not be getting rated in this series itself unless we get to one that is submitted, and I will give my thoughts as to why those maps deserve their rating accordingly. So from our journey in space, let us move to the fifth round that I will be rating. Our fifth round that is submitted to me is The Mighty Jungle by the creator Bachaballs. It is said in the description that there is a hidden finish, so let us see if we can find the hidden finish that is on this map. So at first viewpoints, you can see that there are lots of hints that are all over the map. And this cute little frog at the very beginning, let's not forget to jump across. And as of this point, I have already encountered 2 checkpoints, which means that this should be friendly enough for newer players to adapt to. And there are also directional hints for them to understand where to go. For players who are walking straight, they will notice that this path splits 2. And let's move on to this next section, past the punching glove, and up the tree, and we will get boom blasted up, and we unfortunately fall down. So let's try that again. So this next section, it is more recommended to use the boost from the speed arc in order to navigate the rotating platforms a little bit easier. But newer players might not understand that there's a change in speed whenever you do so, as I was absolutely failed. There is a waterfall at the end. I wonder if that is actually the hidden finish line that the description speaks of. And let's walk through it, and oh, this is a slide floor, it seems, as with the text underneath. And here we are entering the finish line, and that is the 5th map qualified from. Now, on to my official thoughts for this fifth map, as you will see it right now, is that there are really lots of hints for players, newer players in particular, to be able to navigate across the map. There are also lots of checkpoints for them to make a couple of mistakes. And the only real negative things I have to say about this map is that it is for the eventual perhaps release of Fall Guys on mobile, where players are maybe playing on low-end devices where it will be a little bit more complicated for them to grasp the timing of the speed art in combination of the rotating platforms. But other than that, this map is still relatively easy, and it is always fun to see this type of map is being created that has equal challenge for both skilled players as well as newer players. With that, the official rating that I will be giving this map will be a 8.6 out of 10, as I feel that this map itself is relatively easily navigated across without much issues for the newer players. Again, as mentioned, the checkpoints really help the players and even if they make lots of mistakes, I would say that there is always still a chance for the newer players to qualify, as the tree with the boom blaster attached at the very top can in fact pose a little trippiness to even skilled players with the angling of it. But I digress, and again, with any type of map that I create, no, sorry, as I that I rate, I would say that players will have to actually end up being able to adapt properly in order to qualify, because eventually the maps will be always constantly changing, new objects will be added, and everything else is just suited for this now game itself. As I have actually perhaps mentioned in my bonus information for rating criteria, is that I will only be rating 5 maps per episode, and this is indeed the 5th map that I have rated. So this will be the end for today's episode. If there are any suggestions that you would like to give me, please leave a comment down below, and I will see if I am able to make use of these suggestions to further improve this series. If you are extremely negative, the chances are is that the comment will just be left down there and not tended to, unless I can detect you are trying to be sarcastic, but that's another issue for another day. Wherever you are from, I hope that you have a good day ahead, and please look forward to the second episode in this series, which will be released